Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I'm the associate editor for the Facilities Group, which is hosted by Facilities Net. And I am your host today. I am joined by Dr. Steve Salerno, an accomplished educational leader currently serving as the superintendent of the Mount Horeb area school district. His journey began as a dedicated teacher where he developed a deep understanding of classroom dynamics and the importance of fostering an environment where students and staff can thrive. Dr. Salerno's commitment to educational excellence led him to take on roles in school administration, where he focused on building strong, inclusive communities and driving positive change within school systems. Hi, Steve. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for shining a light on this important topic.
Yeah, and so, like you said, this is an important topic. I kind of wish we were talking about something
Hmm.
a little bit more lighthearted, but
Mhm.
for our listeners who don't know, Steve is the superintendent of the Mount Horeb area school districts, like is what we just said. And last school year, so this previous spring, they had an active shooter incident. And fortunately, nobody was hurt. And from all the news that I've read, it's a lot of it is credited to the security and the drills that you guys have done beforehand. So, Steve, can you just tell me a little bit about that day?
Yeah, well, it's a day that will forever be etched in the minds of many here in Mount Horeb. We did lose a student, and that was the student who brought the weapon to school, sadly, with the intent to do harm. It's a day we remember because of the bravery shown by the first responders, our police officer, our school resource officer, who's just absolutely worth his weight in gold. It's a day that we remember because it also helps us to take stock in how blessed we are to have the support of such a loving community. It's a day we remember because we all know the responsibility we have in order to keep our schools safe. And that's not just starting with the staff, but our students. And it's a day because our students rose to the occasion and helped make for a much better outcome than what we really could have had it reached its full conclusion.
I can't imagine how scary that must have been. Even just doing my research and just scrolling on the district's Facebook page and seeing the updates that you were making.
Mhm.
How were you able to communicate with parents, students, and staff during the incident?
This is one area that I definitely feel like we as a district, I personally could improve on. When I heard the shots being fired, I just left my office and drove over to the scene. And I don't have access through mobile to communicate with families using our normal communication means through an outfit called Infinite Campus, is a student records management system that we have.
Mhm.
And I knew that this was a topic that was quickly being bandied about for anyone who's listening to scanners and these sorts of things, that parents were going to be wanting information as quickly as possible, accurate, reliable, forthright information. And so I did what I thought was best at the time, which was just take to social media and provide updates as I could until the situation had stabilized. And then I could work with Aubrey Hanks, who is our coordinator of public relations and resource development here in our district, to send out and return back to our usual traditional method of communication with families. It wasn't optimal, but I also felt like the more that maybe we could get messaging and word out that was reliable, honest, trustworthy information that might allay concerns, while at the same time allowing other people to help channel that message out appropriately.
It's probably best to hear it directly from you, too.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, yeah. To see it unfold the way it did, it just gives you, this is horrific as the experience it is, it does give you such hope for the future when you think about how our young people responded in such a nurturing way of one another and their classmates, helping make certain that they were taken care of. And of course, it goes without saying, our faculty and staff are just the love they have in their hearts for our young people that can never be underestimated. They're like our own children.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important about schools. My husband is a teacher, and
Oh, that's right. You
so
said that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so he really cares about his students, and it's unfortunately active shooter drill or not drills, but active shooter incidents are is something that we have to talk about every school year, and what he would do in that
Mm,
type of situation. And we recently moved, so he's not at his previous school, but his previous school didn't do active shooter drills
mm,
because they were worried about traumatizing their students.
mm,
And I kind of think something like this is a way more traumatizing than having to do a drill. Can you just talk a little bit about how, not how, but why you think practicing is
mm.
important?
Yeah, what's that old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Maybe you've heard that. Maybe
Right.
I'm too old and people don't talk that way anymore, but it's one that often sticks in my mind. And I
Right.
think that to be providing opportunities for drills and the like in an age appropriate way, understanding the audience that you're presenting those drills to and how you're doing it is really key. These drills can be used from anything like inclement weather days to events like the one we just spoke of. And we're doing, I think, a service, not a disservice to our young people when we prepare them. Your mind, your body can't go where your mind hasn't gone, right? And so you have to
Mhm.
be prepared to um, think about what would you do in not just a situation in school, but at church and movie theaters, grocery stores. You need to really think about your surroundings.
I always say that, like, since writing for facilities management, I just care way more about my safety than I
Yeah.
ever did because the more you learn about it, the more like concerning it
Hmm.
is. And just like I always gotta know where my exits are,
Hmm.
which is kind of like I know you shouldn't live in fear, but you should also just be aware of stuff
Absolutely.
like that. Can you walk us through some of the steps that the school district took to respond to the active shooter incident?
In that day in particular, or leading up to the event, or post the event?
Uh, the day in particular.
Well, as you might imagine, it is an all hands on deck experience from the moment that the student was seen traversing through the community with the weapon in hand. It turned out to be, as I understand it, a soft air pellet rifle. Nonetheless, the student did have some contraband with him that could have done some significant damage, even death to
Mhm,
individuals. And it really was all hands on deck. Everybody from around the Dane County region coming out to support us, not just from a police presence, but also proactively a medical presence as well. And then shortly thereafter, we began to get the community's arms wrapped around us from everything from making
mhm,
certain our children had food while they maintained their locked down position. We were in lockdown for some time, and that was because the police were doing their due diligence, making certain that there wasn't a connection at all to the one individual who had been neutralized. And so that meant making certain we kept our students comfortable, our staff comfortable, eventually doing some gradual release in terms of being able to use restroom facilities and the like, but then also pivoting to our work related to the eventual dismissal in an organized way and returning our students back to their loving families.
I lived in the town over from Mount Horeb when
That's
this
right. You said that. Yeah.
when this occurred. I'm not gonna say which one, just out of safety precautions, but
Sure.
the community really did rally around it, and maybe it's just like you could say that it's small town mentality, but it's
Mm,
like everybody had the Mount Horeb strong as their profile picture.
yeah.
And even I'm pretty sure our school district also went into lockdown just like out of precaution because you don't know, it's like a 10-minute drive to
Hmm.
Mount Horeb. And I think that's what people forget a lot is that when something happens in a neighboring town, it affects other areas
Hmm.
too. And it's
Hmm.
not just like, oh, the kids have to go on lockdown because of something that's happening there. It's like events are getting canceled that night,
Hmm.
sports are getting canceled, school is shut down for an unknown period of time. One of the articles that I read that I really do think will haunt me forever now is that students were roller skating, right?
Hmm.
And they were able to leave the gym, but rollerblades were like littered throughout the town. Is that right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And how do you explain that to younger students?
You can't explain the unexplainable. You just have to listen. You have to be there. You have to understand the individual needs of each student and, quite frankly, their families, as many of them have a history themselves, either with loss or tragedy. There's no one way in which you can put the band-aid on, so to speak. It just takes a lot of listening. But one thing that I do know is true is when you look at the research around this, is also important to acknowledge it, but also bring back some degree of some degree of continuity for our young people. Bringing them back to their normal schedules is really important. So, for example, by this was an event that took place on May 1st, and within Friday, May 2nd, we felt the need that we should continue our home events here at school because that's what our kids needed. They needed that continuity. They needed to be around their friends. And those who couldn't be, we understand and we respect that.
Mhm.
Everyone grieves differently. But that just felt good to people. Bringing people back together again was
Right.
really important to us.
You just need the routine. Some people really thrive
There
on
it is. That's
routine.
the word, routine. Thank you.
People thrive on routine, but I
Don't
know
we?
that security is becoming a very, or like security and access control systems are becoming extremely
Mhm.
relevant, especially in schools. And some people treat this like it's a brand new thing because of all the incidents that have been happening as of late. And I don't necessarily agree with that because they were starting to implement security systems when I was in high school,
Mhm.
and that I think my senior year, because I remember we were all upset that only one door was open to get into school during during the day. And I'll tell you where I grew up after the call, so that I think you might understand my annoyance there. But that was like 11, 12 years ago. And so this has been coming. Why do you think the importance of security systems is becoming more popular on topics?
Mhm. Well, I think it's because we were all beginning to realize it can happen anywhere. Never
Mhm.
would we have ever thought that sleepy little Mount Horeb, a bedroom community of Madison, Wisconsin, would be subject to such a crisis as it was. But it can happen anywhere. When I came to Mount Horeb 9 years ago, we didn't even lock the front doors of our schools. Now,
Mhm.
I was an associate principal, or associate superintendent, I should say, at a number of school districts that are much larger in size here in Wisconsin, and it was unheard of not to have the doors locked and have some kind of buzzer system that you would ring into in order to state the
Mhm.
nature of your business, right? In order to be admitted into the school. So here comes big city school guy saying in little sleepy Mount Horeb, we need to lock all of our doors. I got a little ribbing for that, and I'm okay with it. I got broad shoulders. But I also recognize that there are some things that we really could be doing to enhance safety. Kids can't learn, teachers can't teach if they don't feel as though there's the safety need being met. And with
Mhm.
the help of our community, the generosity of our community, we were able to install a number of safety initiatives within our schools for locking the doors and door buzzers, as you've referenced, as being one of them. But I will tell you, even 9, 10 years later, into the privilege of serving as superintendent at Mount Horeb, we're looking at other ways in which we can help protect our students. I can share with you that we've been working with the Department of Homeland Security, and they do
Right.
a free audit of any public institution, by the way, can do this. It's not just Mount Horeb. They'll come in and do a free audit for you of your building, any one of your buildings, all of your buildings for that matter, and provide you with a report of how you might be able to further enhance school safety or library safety or you name it. They're willing to lend a hand. And so we've developed a safety review task force for the express purpose of reviewing these ideas and then developing a team that can help write grants that can help us with some of the brick and mortar solutions that might come out of whatever recommendations it made. We can't constantly go back to the taxpayer and ask referendum after referendum after referendum, but for some low hanging fruit, we certainly can be addressing it through grant writing.
Right. Did you start working with the Department of Homeland Security after the incident?
Yeah, so after we got done with this process, we had what's called an after action report that was completed by law enforcement here in Dane County. And the person who wrote the report, she's just a gem. She said to me, "Hey, Steve, have you heard about this free resource?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'm going to give them a call and see what we've got." Sure enough, this past fall, we've been going through each of our buildings. And in fact, we have a number of 4K partner sites within our school district as well that the district
Mhm.
doesn't own, but we partner with them that they too understand and value security for their children and their staff, that they too are having this assessment done.
What prior training or like protocols helped your staff and students respond effectively in this situation?
Well, I think key among them is the responsibility we all have as Vikings, that's our mascot here, to ensure the safety of our schools. And that if we see something, we say something. We
Mhm.
have to believe, I'm not a medical doctor, but I can tell you that I have to believe that whatever causes someone to act as they have done in circumstances like this, there may be, likely is, some connectedness to mental health concerns. And
Right.
kids talk. Kids talk to each other all the time. And even if they hear the slightest thing, they're doing themselves a service and they're doing others a service by relaying that information onto a trusted adult. And so we
Mhm.
work very hard to have this sense of belonging, chief among all of the things that we do, because without the sense of belonging as your base, then you can expect fewer and fewer kids being part of the solution. But then we also have candid conversations about what do we do if we're in this classroom and something happens? What are our options? And in our district, we have a specific protocol. Every district is different, but whatever your protocol is, there's nothing right or wrong. It just is likely you need to practice it in an age and grade appropriate way.
Mhm.
Whether it be you barricading so that an individual can't enter into the classroom, or if you have the capacity to egress out of the classroom, you're on the first floor, talking about pressure points in windows on where best to smash a window so that you can get out of the window without having to cause injury to yourself or others. All those kinds of things are factored into our faculty kinds of trainings. But the biggest part, I think, and the best return on investment is focusing on the humanistic side of this. What can we do to encourage students to feel a sense of belonging so that they don't ever feel like they need to get to a point like the one that we experienced?
Right. That just that sounds so bleak of having to tell people about like the pressure points of
Mm,
windows, but I remember just like sitting in my husband's classroom and just being grateful that he was on the first floor. And
mm,
now in his new school, he's on the third floor. And
mm,
we were talking about it once. I was like, what do you do in this? And it's, you just have to wait it out. That seems so scary to be.
mm.
And this whole podcast series, they're probably like, McKenna's afraid of everything. And
No,
yeah,
no.
kind of.
But to your thoughtful point earlier in the call, the truth be told is you can't live in a life of fear. You have to live in a life of awareness, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to do otherwise, I think stifles you, and it stifles your ability for your own well-being and that of the people that you have the honor to serve.
But like you
Mm.
said, it's about being proactive instead of reactive because
Mhm.
not having a system in place and then, God forbid, something happens, people could get hurt. People could
Mm.
die. And
Mhm.
you don't want that. Nobody wants that. I just remember I was a senior in high school when Sandy Hook happened,
Oh
and
my.
we had to do or the day that Sandy Hook actually happened, my school was planning on doing a lock and hold drill because that's what it was called back then. And they ended up scrapping it because we all had our phones because it was also like the start of smartphones and we were able to see
Sure.
what was happening. So they moved the drill to the following Monday. And the drill happened for my art class. And it was so different to see how serious people took it that time around. And like your art teacher, they're supposed to be fun, they're supposed to be goofy
Mm.
all day. And he's like kind of pushing us into a closet and it's being so serious
Mhm.
the entire time. How do you help teachers or and staff members get control of that situation so that students can
Mhm.
continue to take it seriously?
Well, you're so right. I mean, no one got into service and public education in order to plan for days like that, right? They want to build experiences that are enriching to kids' lives and helping them learn and grow. But
Mhm.
we also recognize that we would be derelict in our duty if we didn't um, consider what options are available to us and teach our kids in the unlikely event that something like this were to occur, how are we going to respond? And we give our teachers and our staff the tools and equipment they need, the training they need in order to be responsive and exercise their excellent judgment in a crisis like this. There's not a one size fits all approach to this. I think people say, what are you going to do if this occurs? And what are you going to do if X occurs? And the fact pattern of the situation will always determine the response that you have. And we want to just be able to run down as many of those possible fact patterns that will allow our faculty and staff to feel like, okay, I've got this, I can do this. And as evidenced on May 1st, they more than got it. They had it and they were lifesavers.
That's always good to hear. How are you working with your facilities team moving forward now?
Yeah, maybe to take a step backwards in order to take three steps forward. When I arrived here 9 years ago, it was really important for me to develop a friendship, a partnership with our local police department. And over time, I saw that that relationship was really growing in a very positive way. In fact, in 2020, at a time when many school districts are looking to pull back on school resource officers, our district engaged in an intergovernmental agreement with the local village to bring on a school resource officer. And we did so with the mindset of what we wanted our program to look like. It wasn't a gotcha program. It wasn't looking to cuff and stuff. It really was designed to be community policing at its finest. And we happen to have a school resource officer and a gentleman who used to be a teacher. Well, so you got the best of both worlds, right? And has the
Right.
capacity to build relationships with kids and with families. And since then,
Mhm.
we've continued to nurture that. And that carried us through the relationship we forged with our local village and its PD, I think has allowed us to get to some really creative, positive, solutions oriented activities, even before May 1st occurred, but especially in the wake of May 1st.
What advice do you have for other schools who are looking to bolster their security programs?
I think if people are just even wondering, well, gosh, this is really going to be an expensive endeavor, it doesn't have to be. There are some low cost, no cost activities that can be implemented within your school community. And in fact, a lot of Grants are available for school districts if you have a grant writer. If you're not fortunate to have one, a lot of work through the Wisconsin Department of Justice's Office of School Safety. They are just amazing. They offer significant dollars to school districts to be proactive if there is a need for money. But I think it really is, as I said maybe a little earlier, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but I think as much as you can focus on creating a sense of belonging for all, not just certain groups, but all. All means all. Each and every one of our children, each and every one of our staff members. Set the conditions, find the ways in which we can ensure that people feel a sense of belonging. It's not such a heavy lift after all, because everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
Do you have any recommendations on how often schools should be performing drills or even just like testing their security systems just to make sure that they're working properly?
Yeah, far be it for me to tell other districts how to run their operations, because the dynamics of their buildings might be very different. It could be a small single room schoolhouse, or it could be
Right.
a large size school district with multiple buildings. But I do think that getting back to how do we know kids are able to learn and staff are able to do what they do so beautifully each and every day, we set the conditions for them to feel safe. And whatever it takes, you should be prepared to do. If not, at least every couple of months, having conversation, bringing it back around again in new and unique ways, different avenues, so that way it doesn't become repetitive and people turn it off, but rather they lean in and want to learn more and hear more about how they can be part of the solution. So it really is there's no one size fits all. I think anybody who tells you a magic bullet is maybe making a mistake. I think really it has to come down to what's right for you. Encircle yourself with the people who it impacts so they can help you with decision making. To make
Mhm.
those decisions in isolation, I think, is mistaken. And certainly branching out to your police, your fire, your EMS, have them walk the halls, see what these buildings are like. If they have to come into it, we want them to see, offer suggestions for improvement, and the like.
Do you ever take suggestions from students?
All the time, all the time. In fact, do you remember? You make me think that you might have been a student about the time that this happened in 2016. There was well, it was 2019, wasn't that about right when we had that mass shooting in Florida, down on February
Yeah,
14th.
Parkland. Yeah,
Yeah.
2018.
Was it 2018 now? Goodness, time
Right.
flies, and there's so many of these horrific tragedies. I called together a group of students, and I said to them, "Talk to us. Tell us where you're at." I took them out to lunch with about 20 kids. We went up and had pizza at a local place called the Grumpy Troll, which I highly recommend. And we just had a roundtable conversation with trusted adults. And since then, on and off, we've had those check ins with other groups of students around mental health needs, around supports they'd like to see for their schools. We were fortunate to pass a referendum that allowed us to do a lot of things from a brick and mortar way at our high school. Our kids never let us down. If you engage with them, they're always respectful and understanding and very, very thoughtful. I learn something new every day
Mhm.
from kids.
Right. Because I think when you're in charge of like the whole district, you're like the top dog, Steve. I think sometimes people forget, you know what it's like to be in the classroom, but a lot of superintendents are actually facilities professionals.
Hmm.
And so they're seeing the classroom from a different way. And I do
Sure.
think that sometimes people, once they get to the top, they forget what it's like to be in the
Mhm.
classroom. So hearing that you talk to the students and hearing that you talk to the teachers and the faculty, that's what makes a
Well, I
community.
want kids to know me and know me as one of the many resources they have at their disposal. I didn't get into this because I'm big on titles and names and these sorts of things. I just genuinely love our kids, and I've got buildings full of staff members who feel the same way.
Yeah. Well, I know that we're running a little short on time, but do you have
You take
anything
whatever you
else?
need, friend.
Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, I just am really appreciative of you and your organization for shining a light on a topic as important to this. And I'm grateful for any listeners. And certainly, if anyone should ever want to reach out or I can be of service to them, I want to pay forward the many blessings that have been given to me. And so feel free to give me a call. My number is 608-437-7010. And maybe if you'd be kind enough to include my email with the podcast, feel free to do that too. Whatever we can do to help support safety for our faculty, staff, and our young people.
Definitely. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facilities maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editor, Paul Ellertson. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubach, Dan Hounsel, Jeff Warden, Jill McDermott, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. If you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email Mackenna at mackenna.moralez@tradepress.com.